So with that, we want to kind of kick off our session today. And if you have any questions, I want to welcome you to please use the chat. I will be monitoring the chat, and as much as I can help it, I will pause our moderators to make sure that your questions are answered as they come up. However, if they're deep in conversation, I will hold off until the end of the conversation and the end of the particular panel session, and then I will read all the questions out loud. So as you all know, VitaLink is focused on making sure that all of our students and educators and parents in Orange County are aware of career opportunities and are able to access different programs to help them get to those different careers. We have series of different events and competitions and conferences available coming up. The biggest one that we have is on Wednesday, November 30th. We have our Student Leadership Summit here in Orange County in person. It is a full day of skill development, career exploration, finding mentors, and meeting with industry professionals and students enhancing their network circle. This program is focused just for students, and we want to make sure to give them the best skills that they could need to be the most successful person as they go into their career. So please feel free to email any of our team members, myself, Ari, or Ashley, if you have any questions about this program. We also are going to be kicking off our competitions next week, so please keep an eye out. We are bringing back our Energy Invitational competition, our Battle of the Bots competition, formerly known as Robot OC, the Culinary competition, Digital Media Arts competition, and My Dream Career competition. And we look forward to seeing all your students' great work in these competitions. And with that, I'm keeping in check with our time. I want to pass off our session to Ms. Rosemary. She is a wonderful professional that has volunteered to come in and be the moderator for our college panel. So everyone else can make sure that your videos are turned off and you are muted, and I will hand everything off to Ms. Rosemary.
Thank you very much, Nadia. Welcome, everyone. I guess we would like to start by my introducing myself so everybody feels comfortable with who's moderating today. And then we will ask each of us to introduce ourselves to everybody else. I'm Rosemary Christopher. I'm the president of 3 companies. This company that you see here, RxRS, is Rx Research Services. It works in the biotech industry. And our newest offering is Food Smart Strategies International, which is a career pathway and food safety consultancy for the food industry, particularly for food manufacturers between 5 and 500 employees. So that's my background. I'm quite busy with that. And I have spent 30 years with internships, apprenticeships, and so forth. And I'm very, very happy to say that I'm working very closely with Denise Foley, and we've created a career pathway for bioscience students, whether food or biotech. So that's my background, and I serve on Denise's Biotechnology Advisory Board. So that's me. I'm happy to be here, and I'm, again, all about careers and jobs and work. So that's me. Denise, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Denise Foley. I'm at Santiago Canyon College. I'm co-chair of the biology department, but I'm the program coordinator for the biotechnology program at Santiago Canyon College. And I've also been working with the 3 other colleges, or really 4 other colleges that are part of our what we call the OC Biotech Education Collaborative, because we have similar interests in getting students through a biotech pathway, and 4 of the colleges have very in-line curriculum that we can send students through, and we're also working with OCC and their food science program with aligned programs to biotechnology. So I've been working at the college for 17 years, and we've been doing biotech since about 2013. So we've been doing this for a little bit now, and we have a pathway that we have students going through.
It looks like you're on mute, Rosemary.
Unmute. Okay, so now I will go one at a time that I can see on my screen and ask each person if they would unmute themselves and introduce. I see a Margaret
Oh,
Calmetta.
sorry to interrupt, Rosemary. The
Oh,
introductions were just for the panelists on the
oh,
call. Yeah, no, you're okay. So I know that we are waiting for Miss Merchant to join us, so we can start with the questions with Denise, and if she joins us, she'll jump in.
oh, okay, okay. So we did the introduction of Denise. That's fine. And now we can start asking the questions. So, Denise, can you tell us how dual enrollment is improving high school students' knowledge and skills before entering your courses? Dual enrollment, that's the
Right. So all of the campuses that I'm aware of, so I'm talking about Santiago Canyon College, Santa Ana College, Fullerton College, and Irvine Valley College have dual enrollment with a course called Intro to Biotech. And that dual enrollment course is a GE Life Science course. So the students are getting GE Life Science credit for their GE pattern, transfers to CSUs, the UCs, and many other places. And it's also part of the certificate programs for biotechnology. So the students get a leg up if they're in these dual enrolled intro biotech courses, and they're usually happening right on the campus if they've made agreements with the college, so they're happening right on the high school campus for the high school students, either in the bell schedule or after school. All depends on the individual situation of the particular high school campus. And it's really preparing the students to enter the biotech pathways and, earn certificates that will get them in the door for the industry, and they can be working while they're continuing to learn. And even if the student tries the class out and then decides, you know what, maybe it's not really the path that I'm interested in, not a waste, because they've taken a GE Life Science class and finished it, and that's college course work, and they've gotten that GE course under their belt. So just that's a major benefit to the students that can get into these dual enroll classes if they're ready. The one little caveat that I should mention is that something we're experiencing like just this semester is we had some freshmen that somehow got into the dual enrolled class. They're not quite ready to get into a dual enrolled college intro to biotech class at freshmen. So they're struggling a bit. They haven't even had their biology class yet. So they probably need to be, maybe a junior to be really well set to do well in the class without struggling too hard. Although possibly a sophomore in the right situation could do it. So just a little word out there to the teachers that if you're setting up your students for success in a dual enrolled intro to biotech course, you might want to be targeting, the juniors and seniors so that they're best prepared to do well in the class.
Oh, that sounds wonderful, Denise. So your dual would, just as a question, because we're going to be working on a career pathway together, could I ask you, do either one of those 2-unit courses that you're offering starting in 2023, could a junior or a senior in high school take those?
Yeah, potentially. So the food safety course would probably require a little bit more, work on their part if they haven't taken, any science courses in the background, because we're talking about things like bacteria and infections and, food safety sort of issues. The regulation and compliance course, maybe they could get through that too. But again, when you're asking a student to take a completely online course and it's a bit accelerated, it's only 2 units, but still they're taking it all within a 4-week time frame. It has to be the right student that is motivated to do this and stay on top of things and complete, because they only have 4 weeks to do it, and they'll be taking it in January with the college students, and they are also in high school. The high schools start back in January, but the college students, at least at our college, are not back until February. So they have January off to focus on these classes. So the right student, yes, but I don't think I would just throw the doors open to any student.
Got it. Okay. And we're asking here, your classes that you offer in the dual program, what real world experience does your class offer students that will benefit them in entry-level careers?
Well, they're getting some experience, right? They're not becoming proficient as they would in some of the other classes, but they're getting their hands wet, right? Like they're starting to work with things like electrophoresis and polymerase chain reaction and things like that. So those courses can be helpful to really familiarize the students with some of the technology that is being used in industry, because they're actually doing it, and doing helps makes them understand it. So it does help. It definitely helps set them up. The intro to biotech laboratory is something that's helpful to get them going and thinking about it. And of course, if it sparks their interest, like I really like this, working with this technology, I really like to continue on with this, then they can continue on and get trained to be proficient by taking some of the other classes in the certificate pathway.
Oh, that's great. Okay, that was bringing me to the next question, which is two parts. Can students receive a certification or a badge after completing your courses? That's the first part of the question.
Yeah, so our certificates at the four colleges that are working strictly with biotech, but that's true even in the food science that they're working on in Orange Coast College. So for all of these courses, they're stacked. So for example, this first certificate of achievement is going to be the Intro to Biotech lecture and lab, which is dual enrolled for a lot of the different campuses at this particular time. And then they have to take an Intro to Chem class, and then they take a basic lab skills class. And that's where they become proficient in some very basic laboratory operations like liquid handling, for example, also making solutions and doing some basic laboratory math manipulations so that they can make a solution correctly, for example. So those three courses are what's going to get them that first level certificate. And by taking the dual enrolled course, during their own school year, and then perhaps taking the basic lab skills class in the summer, and then maybe in the summer or right before they start college during that summer between senior and their freshman year in college, they could take the Intro to Chem class. They would have their certificate already, and they'd be like moving along that pathway much quicker. And so, yes, that can be much of a benefit. And as I was mentioning, the other certificates stack. So we have a second level and a third level certificate, which uses all those courses and then plus additional courses to get them to the next level certificate. And then the same for the third level certificate. They're taking additional courses on top of the ones they finish. So all along the way, they're getting certifications. Right now, we're working on a badging project, which would badge specific skills. So they would take a course and then they could just take the particular exam on that particular skill, and it's a national organization that's doing the badging. It hasn't really got off the ground yet, but we will be starting that in the future, probably in the next year. And then the students would be able to acquire badges for specific skills that they finish. But they would need to be taking the skills-based class, not the Intro to Biotech course. That's not enough to get them proficient in a skill, but the basic lab skills class would start to get them proficient. Yes.
Oh, that's great. So if they do something like that, how many hours or credits must be completed to actually receive a certification in a course?
Okay, so for the badging, there would be a couple of badges that would be available after the basic lab skills class. And the basic lab skills class is a 4-unit class, meaning they would be meeting for 3 hours of lecture and 3 hours of lab over the course of a 16-week class. Now, if it was compressed, the same number of hours in a compressed schedule. For the certification, it's going to be 3 4-unit classes. So they would take the Intro to Biotech lecture and lab, that's 4 units. They would take the basic lab skills, another 4 units, and they would take that intro camp, another 4 units. So they would be taking 12 units of coursework to get the first level certification.
Wow. And that's all transferable into an associate's degree, correct? Is that?
So the intro to biotech is transferable pretty much across the board, even if they don't go biotech. As far as and these could be part of the associate's degree. Yes, we have all the campuses have an AS in biotech, but furthermore, they're also transferable to a bachelor's degree at 2 community colleges currently in the state, one in Miracosta, so that's in Oceanside, and the other one's in Solano Community College, which is in Napa. And those 2 community colleges have a bachelor's in biomanufacturing, and all of the biotech pathway transfers, so the students really don't have much else to take. There's like a 1 unit course that they can take online, I think, that they're missing. It's very specific to their program. They can take it this summer before they start, but there's very little that they have to do before they transfer as juniors right into the biomanufacturing program. So it's really quite a boon for our students if they're looking for a low cost bachelor's degree that will train them to get a really good paying job in industry, because the whole program, starting from the community college as a freshman and finishing the biomanufacturing degree at, say, Miracosta, will cost them less than $10,000. So that's less than 1 year at UC. So they get the whole degree for less than 10,000. It could even be less if they're taking advantage of some of the programs now, like the Promise Scholarship, that makes the first 2 years of community college free if they're following certain guidelines. They have to fill out a FAFSA, for example. They have to maintain a 3.0 GPA, and they also have to take full units, like they have to be a full-time student. So technically they could pay for their bachelor's degree with a lot less than $10,000 if they're going this particular route. And just as the FYI, other colleges are considering offering these biomanufacturing degrees. And so there might be other options in the state in the future for students to get to transfer. But right now there's 2 available, one in Oceanside and one in Napa. So depending on how you want to roll, you could transfer to one of those 2 and have a very low cost degree. And we've actually had a few students do a commute from here to Oceanside because they only have classes a couple days a week. And so they just commute and spend long days down in Oceanside before they come back. Not a very great commute, but doable for 2 years if you really, really didn't want to move to Oceanside. So it's kind of it's a really cool opportunity.
That's like incredible to be able to get your bachelor's, your associate and your bachelor's all wrapped up and get it done for less than 10,000. We should be talking to every single parent in Southern California that has a student interested in science and bioscience. It's a reachable thing now.
Definitely is, especially for students that are, really reluctant to take out a lot of student loans. And I get it. Who wants to have a lot of student loans? And so there's some students that are really, really reluctant to do that. But this is a path to get a STEM degree, get into a STEM industry that's paying very well with a lot of opportunity for upward mobility. And so, yeah, it's a very good opportunity.
So in speaking to high school educators and teachers and professors, how can do they have to do anything to update their curriculum to satisfy your criteria at the community college or at the university? Do they have to update anything? Make their students better ready to take this dual thing, Well,
so I was mentioning in the beginning, the dual enrollment class is, doesn't have prereqs per se, but students really should have some basic algebra, right? Because the lab math isn't all that complicated math. It's applied math to laboratory situations. So knowing some basic algebraic, manipulations is probably something that needs to happen. Having had their basic biology and basic chemistry class under their belt makes it so much easier for them to succeed in the college level class, because when you get to college, there's a basic assumption that things like a cell and a cell membrane and proteins and just like the basics. And so if they haven't had any of that, it's a lot bigger struggle for the students to get through that college level class. So while there isn't strict prereqs for the class, setting up a student for success means we probably should be targeting those juniors that have had some of those basic classes under their belt so that they can succeed. As far as aligning other curriculum, there are opportunities for articulation if dual enrollment isn't going to be the option. But just know that the UCs are also looking very closely at articulation agreements and what that actually is going to mean for their acceptance of different programs. So until the UCs come out with a statement, we're kind of eyeballing the articulation agreements, but we do have some articulation agreements, which means that if the high school class is covering all of the same material in the lecture and the laboratory as the intro to biotech class, an individual college can agree to accept it as credit by exam. So that means that the students are kind of waived out of that particular class and they have credit by exam and they could go into like the next level class without taking the intro to biotech. So as far as the community colleges are concerned, the articulation agreements are perfectly fine. I'm just putting a word of warning that the UCs have sort of made a statement that they're looking at articulation more closely and they may come up with a statement about what they do and do not want to accept when a student is transferring from the community college to the UC, but they have not made a real strong statement as yet, just kind of like a warning, they're looking at it.
Good, good. Now the next question is, how have online courses changed the way you instruct and interact with students?
Well, I mean, for biotech, I don't think it's changed it all that much because even during the pandemic, we were offering face-to-face courses. Now we had to follow strict rules about that, right? About spacing and how many students could be in a class and things like that. But, you know, biotech is skills-based and you cannot teach skills over the internet, right? You have to be in class handling things. So in some senses, it hasn't changed that. But on the other hand, students have become more, you know, savvy with the things like Canvas and Zoom and all of those kinds of tools. So they're more likely to use them. They might zoom into a talk or they, you know, that's being hosted hybrid. For example, they'll watch recordings much more readily when you have like an industry speaker that they couldn't go to or happened in the past and the recordings available. They'll interact with instructors on Zoom. And we've often had hybrid lectures where they meet part of the time in class and part of the time they're doing online work. And students are perfectly fine with that now. You know, they're kind of used to it. And while I wouldn't say students were super reluctant in the past, it just is almost par for the course. Now students have no problem with expecting something to happen online because we've all been through that for a couple of years. But biotech teaching hasn't really changed much because it's still hands-on.
Okay. And do you think that the students' experiences are enhanced? Are they doing better or the same as classroom?
Online?
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah, like I said, maybe they're more comfortable with some of the things that are happening online and they may take advantage of it. So in that sense, maybe they've improved, but the hands-on is still the hands-on. So they have to master the skills, which is always sometimes difficult, right? Students have sometimes problems mastering some of the skills, especially when you're saying you need to do this task in this amount of time, or you haven't passed the skills, like, you know, like marker. That can be a problem. Students need practice and some students need more practice, and that's just the reality of it.
Sure, sure. Now, in your opinion, what 3 skills or 2 skills or whatever should high school teachers make sure students build before going to college? Are there
I don't think
kind of soft skills or?
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be new information. I think people have probably heard this, but you know, to not be afraid of doing some math manipulations, applied math, for example, like how to make a solution, being, you know, given some, you know, some information about things and saying, okay, now you need to do this in a math problem, and let them work through that. If they're more comfortable with that, they're going to be more comfortable getting through the math manipulations in a class, like the basic lab skills, because some students really do struggle. And really, I heard someone talk the other day, and I was like, that's so true. It's not that the students don't know the math. I mean, because a lot of the math is pretty simple: addition, multiplication, division. It's knowing when to do it. So they're looking at a problem and they don't know how to apply the different rules of the math problem to that particular scenario. So it's the application of it, making them more comfortable. And then, yeah, soft skills are always important. Sometimes students, they don't, especially when they get to college after being in a place like high school where it's very much you need to show up on time or you get a late slip or something. And that's maybe not what's happening in college, but we try to run the biotech classes like a work environment. So you need to show up on time, and you need to work in groups, because that's what's happening in the group environment. This group is given a task and they have to work together and work it out. And some students work less well in groups than others, and some like to sit back or whatever. And it's getting over some of that, soft skills, the reliability, the punctuality, the interpersonal communication. Those are all things that can be helpful. And then, of course, it's the study skills, teaching students that you can't just show up to class and be done. It's not how it works. It shouldn't be that way really in any class, but in college for sure. You don't just show up and you're done. You have to go back and practice and learn and work through the concepts and make sure that it's actually part of your knowledge bank. It's not just, oh, I comprehended it when I was sitting in class that day, because now you have to apply it and use it in a new situation. So I guess those are the issues.
Yeah, and I think I think maybe that kind of folds into what advice do you have for high school educators who are preparing students for biotech careers? And then if see what you say about that. You have any special things to tell them?
Say that one more time.
Do you have any special advice for high school educators and teachers who are preparing students for biotech careers?
Just show them all of the options, because there's a lot of question as to what biotech actually encompasses, right? And
Yes.
people don't even know what it is. They're like, oh, it's something. And maybe after coming out of the pandemic, they have some vague idea that maybe it had something to do with vaccine development and maybe the test development. And of course it did. It was huge. Biotech was huge in that realm. But there's so many other things like organ transplantation. Like, we're having a talk at Santiago on November 2nd. And it's a bioprinting, an individual who works for a bioprinting company is going to come and talk about his industry and, the future of it, and printing organs like replacement lungs, for example. So you wouldn't have to necessarily put on an organ transplant list. You would print one and, seed it with your own cells. So you grow your own and then replace it. And they're working on things, and they say within like 5 years they're going to be testing that in humans. They're really not that far away for lungs. And they talked about hearts and kidneys. They're next on the list, but they're more complicated, so that's going to take longer. So it's just amazing to think what biotech can do. So there's the pharmaceutical manufacturing and development. It's related to med devices as well. There's just so much that biotech hits. Environmental, biofuels, it goes on. And the students don't know this. They don't understand what biotech has to offer for them. And so letting them explore the different avenues is, I think, important, so that they can see that if they get some of these skills, they can go into lots of different areas that are of interest to that individual student. Because, we grow up thinking of things like, oh, I kind of like medicine, so it's a doctor or a nurse, or maybe I'm going to be a paramedic, right? Maybe physical therapy. They just don't have a lot of other options that are top of their mind. But if they're science leaning students and they're interested in environmental or saving species or, organ transplantation, there's just so much. If they knew all the things that were open to them, they might want to go down this particular path instead of something that's strictly, let's say, health science.
Yeah, comes to mind you know, in my industry, you know, cosmetics used to be just cosmetics, just chemistry. Now they put stem cells in cosmetics and help people heal their faces, you know, and whatever, hands, faces, because stem cells are now there. And then don't forget about all the advanced foods that they're doing. You know, pretty soon, you know, they'll be taking stem cells from different animals, and no longer will we be killing animals for food. We'll be just getting it from stem cells. So,
Yeah, they're
you know,
so they're
yeah,
bioprinting meat too. Yeah, I was they were
yeah,
talking about that. The texture is the one thing they're working on, right? Because while they can get the components, it's the way it feels in your mouth. If it's not similar, people aren't going to reject it. So they're still working on that. But yeah,
exactly.
they can make that, you know, yeah. And so they, even for things like cosmetics, they might be getting mushroom stem cells and growing it and isolating the things they need to put in cosmetics. Yeah, there's so much that's biotech related in so many different industries. Even
Yeah.
fashion. I guess there's some bacteria that makes a particular pigment that they're using to dye fabric. It's just like it goes on and on and on. So
Yes, and we found that out in the food industry. We thought, well, maybe there's one or two jobs. Well, all of a sudden, food is in the bioscience world big time, and there's like 8 or 9 jobs that never existed before that now exist. So that's wonderful, and I think we're right up about 2 minutes. I wonder if Anita can tell us, do we ask for questions or before we go to our break, or what do we do here?
Yes, I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to submit any questions. So if you do have questions, you're welcome to unmute yourself. If there are no questions, I do want to point out that we do have a break scheduled very briefly for just 5 minutes, just to give everyone a chance to stand up and stretch their legs, and then we'll switch over to the industry panel. So if Ms. Denise, if you have any last notes, you're welcome to say them. If not, thank you so much, and stick around for the industry.
Thank you.
I'll put my email in the chat. So if anybody has specific questions they want to ask, I will be happy to try to answer them or direct the questions to somebody that can.
Thank you so
Denise,
much.
very much.
So we are gonna pause our recording. Welcome back, everyone, to the industry panel that we have for you this evening. Our industry panel today will also be moderated by Ms. Rosemary Christopher, and I'm going to hand it off to Ms. Rosemary to introduce our panel.
Great. I think most of you are here for the first part, so you know who I am. I'm basically a CEO and president of 3 companies, and I'm very happy to be here today. And thanking VitalLink for putting this valuable program together. So thank you so much. I see we have wonderful industry representatives here. So I would like each one to introduce themselves. So I see Margaret up there first on my screen. So Margaret, would you like to lead off and introduce yourself and tell us more about your company and what you do? We're excited to hear.
Okay, absolutely. My name is Dr. Margaret Calmetta, and I'm CEO of Rapid Nexus Nanotech Wound Solutions. We are in the business of preventing amputations and bringing a product to the marketplace that closes and heals diabetic wounds as well as wounds on the elderly population. We're really excited to be bringing our products to the market because today alone, 1,500 patients received an amputation just because they have diabetes or are elderly. So this is an epidemic and it's just getting worse. Diabetes is on the rise and the elderly population is also increasing. We are here to help this population save limbs and, save lives.
Great. Oh my goodness. Can't wait to hear more from you.
Thank you.
And Christine, would you like to say something? I understand you're COO of the company.
Yeah, so my name is Christine Pasiak, and I work together with Dr. Margaret, and we have Rapid Nexus, our nanotech wound solutions company. And I'm not going to repeat what Doctor said, but we are in the business of helping patients, preventing amputations. And so that patients can live more of a productive life.
Thank you. Yes, that's so exciting.
Thank you.
I'm sure all of us has somebody or somebodies in our family that suffer from diabetes, and it's a cruel, cruel disease.
Mhm.
Katie, would you like to introduce yourself? You're next.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Kim. I'm the Senior Director of Clinical Operations at Equilium. Just to highlight a little bit about Equilium, we are a clinical stage biotech company. We really focus on immunobiology. And right now we are treating autoimmune and inflammatory diseases such as GVHD, lupus nephritis. So thanks for having me today.
Oh, you're quite welcome. We'll have much questions for you. Hot topic, immunology, right? How about Sherry? Sherry?
Yeah, Cherie. Hi, my name is Cherie Ng, and I'm the Senior Director of Research at Equilium. So Katie's kind of my counterpart. She's on the clinical operations side, and I'm on we call the preclinical research side. So I run a team that does all the research necessary to bring a drug, basically up to the door of a clinical trial. So I have an immunology background, and most of what my group focuses on is immunology and trying to figure out how a drug might work for any given disease that we're interested in treating. So really happy to be here and hope to answer some questions for people.
Oh, great. Absolutely great. And do we have a Dr. Alex Way here as well?
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Alex. I'm the lead scientist for Archive Biosciences. Sorry, I was trying to turn on my video. I think Netta is letting me turn on right now. It's disabled, but lead scientist at Archive Biosciences. We're an early stage startup looking for seed funding. We're in the stages of raising seed funding. And what we do is we make in vitro blood vessels for companies like Katie and Cherie's, where they can send us their drugs, and then we can toss it into our system, test it through our blood vessels to see if any novel new compounds that pharmaceutical companies are discovering have any cytotoxic effects. So we're early stage startup. Good to be here this afternoon.
Oh, that's great. How exciting. What exciting things. I love being on the outer edges, as it were, but this is superior. So I'm going to ask some questions and ask who would like to start, and you just feel free to take turns answering if you want to. And if nobody does, we'll go to the next question. Okay, so the first is a two-part question, because this is all about like jobs and apprenticeships. So at this stage of your company, do you offer internships, apprenticeships, job shadowing, or volunteer opportunities for students to gain experience? If no, why not? If yes, what is the age requirement? Now, who would like to start? I know I can say a few things, but I'll let you guys go. Margaret, do you want to say something, or Christine?
Sure, yes. So we would like to onboard volunteers and students interested in internships. We have been doing that already for several years, and we find that it's a great help to us. As far as particular age groups, I think that for research that we are looking to do, or some of the tasks associated with getting a product to market, such as artwork, packaging, just delivering it to the printer, that kind of thing. I don't think we have an age requirement, except that we will say over 18 would be really the thing that we are looking for.
And are these totally volunteer? They would be, the students would be volunteers rather than paid?
So we do have a program where we put the student on a stipend basis, and they get $500 per month for offering 10 hours per week. And then we also offer them shares in the company. We do anticipate to be acquired sometime next year. And so the shares can become multiples of the time that they're putting in with us.
That's superior. Where was I when I was 18 and 19? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Who else would like to say? That's excellent. Sherry,
I would love to put in a pitch here too. So actually we do have paid college interns, and we've had those for a couple years, and we love working with them. But recently I was talking to one of my researchers, and they're interested in doing some mentoring for high school students. So we'd be really open if anyone's interested. We'd love to have, maybe a shadow for a week and then maybe some longer term mentoring. But we've just started looking into that and would be really open to some conversations if anyone is interested.
that is wonderful. Get them started early.
Yeah.
Katie?
Yeah, no, intern, I mean, we at Equilium just recently started offering internships in clinical operations. So it's really great. We really tested it out during the summer. So it really just gives the opportunity for hands-on experience coming into the office. Operations as a whole really does have a lot of experience-based knowledge. So we started there. We have tried to extend internships with the folks that we've had working with us. Because there is some remote opportunity, but just given the breadth of work, I think, focusing on those internships and really growing from the summer and then building out based on individual plans is probably the goal and how we would grow that program.
I just think that's fabulous and really fabulous because many years ago, I couldn't, working on the USC Pharmacy Board of Directors, we could hardly get, these are doctoral level students, internships. People were moving so fast in these companies that they just couldn't do it. And now I see that the newer companies are making this space, and that's just absolutely wonderful. It's wonderful. Alex, do you want to say anything about that, or you're not there?
We're not there yet. We're growing right now, and as we're growing, we can look into some more opportunities for internships.
Sure. I imagine looking for seed funding is challenging enough.
Right.
Now, already Katie answered a question, I think, by the next question, which is, would your company be interested in supporting local high school programs in biotechnology with apprenticeship opportunities or internship? I think apprenticeship is 40 hours. In our world, we are registered with the state of California for apprenticeships, internships, and pre-apprenticeships. And the way we define it is internships for high school students or ones that are in between high school and college. Pre-apprenticeships, like for community college students that may have 20 hours, maybe not, or 16 hours, 20 hours. And full apprenticeship for us, because we're registered and have funding for apprenticeships, is 40 hours a week. So it's kind of serious and it's a commitment. So do you have any kind of a structure like that at any of your companies where you define it in those terms? No?
I would say certainly for Equilium, we don't. For internships right now, we tended to take, paid college internships, and we just called them interns. So we just kind of standard, internship standard nomenclature, and we work with their schedules.
You don't have a requirement about hours or anything on that order, right?
No, generally we ask for at least 10 hours a week though, because that's the minimum you need to, one, get something done and learn something in the process. So, same, but for both lab and operations, you need to be able to do something enough so that you get used to it, you learn what the task is, and you have enough time to spend with people so that you can, so you can pick up on whatever the project is. So generally, we always ask for at least 10 hours, but we also understand that, people have school or schedules. So generally it's we hope for more than 10 hours, but we don't require that. And, I would say at most, at least certainly during the school year, I don't think we get more than 20 hours.
That's good news. It's good that everybody hears that's on the call. When we do them in the food industry, very often they're only 8 hours. That's all the food people can take. That's all they can handle. for 8 hours a week. So we'll move to our next question.
Miss Rosemary, there is a
Yes.
question in the chat that I think fits really well with this part of our conversation from the team at Anaheim Unified High School District. They want to know what are some training or skills that you guys would require for high school students that so they can work on them for the internship partnership.
Great, good question. Who
So-
wants to jump in? Skills that you want. Seeing somebody
I
come
think, you know, email writing, typing skills, good phone speaking skills, and just, you know, the use of the English language in a way that is concise and I think kind, you know, that's really what we require. And then we're able to train.
Yeah, I can build on that. I think for me, kind of one of the things that I really like to see is just really a passion for kind of this opportunity, as well as just really creativity. I mean, coming to an internship and really not having prior exposure, it's really just soaking up all of the knowledge that you can and learning from this experience. So in terms of soft skills, I would definitely agree. Communication is key, right? In operations, there are just cross-functional areas that touch every part of the study. And so being able to be transparent and communicate what you're working on and how we're moving forward is super critical, but also a lot of it is problem solving as well. So using kind of that creative aspect and really critical thinking skills and decision making, just kind of tying all that together cross-functionally and pulling it together is one of the key skills that I look for as well.
Yeah, and I'll just add as well, you know, being able to ask questions, like certainly they will have, you know, whenever we have an intern or something like that, you know, there's always a mentor who takes care of them and they can ask questions. But, you know, obviously they're not necessarily holding their hand every second of the day. So we want someone who is, you know, who's confident enough to ask questions. And we always say there's no stupid questions. We'd rather just ask, you know, you ask and be sure at that point. So definitely someone who's not afraid to ask questions of the entire team and take advantage of the resources that are available to them.
Absolutely. In one of our internship apprenticeship things, we are asking for them to be Excel experienced. And actually the sponsor company asked that we test on Excel because they were working with data entry and data, looking at data. So that's one that our biotech and pharma apprenticeships ask for, is the ability to have they'd really like the whole Microsoft Office suite be under control. That's what they would like. So that's one of the things, that's our particular thing that we have to test for before we send somebody out. So this is the next question that I have is, which Katie and I think Margaret kind of alluded to a little bit, but maybe you can expand on, is 3 soft skills that entry-level people should have, 3 soft skills. And I heard Cherie say, not be afraid to ask questions. That was the first on my list. Ask good questions.
Ask a lot of questions. Yes, absolutely. That's kind of one of the key ways to learn. I think we hit on a lot of them already, really. So communication is a soft skill, definitely, and you can grow with that. Understanding, you know, your team's communication style as well as your own, so that you can just excel in that piece. I think I also touched on the critical thinking, decision-making skill set as well. But I also think, you know, especially with interns, it's really time management and prioritization. That's one of those things that you don't get used to. You kind of have a lot on your plate and you got to figure out what to do first, what's most important, and really just kind of deciding what's a must-have versus nice to have. It's a part of everyday life, right? You've got to line yourself up for success. And in order to do that, you have to understand kind of what comes first and what comes second, and taking bite-sized chews. So really being able to organize yourself that way would be one soft skill I would put out there as well.
Anybody else would like to contribute? I think you covered them very well, all of you, and Katie in particular. That there's one in there that I think is is like so incredibly key that even in dealing with senior level people, we have to remind them. And that is find out the community, the communication style of the team. I find that is so important, and so many people don't take the time to do that, and to find out how important is culture and the company culture. How important is that? You know, before they go into a company, it's so critical. So
Yeah.
I like that. I like that you mentioned it. We're actually starting a whole course on the culture of food safety, for example, because you can't get anything done if you can't get the team synced.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, now with our more virtual world, with the pandemic and us kind of adapting to this, you know, a lot of things can get lost in translation. So just making sure that, you know, communication is very clear and, you know, it's not misunderstood in any way, and following up with kind of documentation. And there's just so many different ways to communicate. So it's just really critical.
Yes. And, you know, how emails are delivered or how texts are delivered. There can be quite a bit of misunderstanding or hurt feelings, you know, or whatever the story is, just in delivering words. So this stuff is all more important than ever, because a lot of people are remote workers now. Now, of course, in bioscience, most of us have to go in, but just thinking of those things, because Katie's in charge of ClinOps, and we do a tremendous amount of work in ClinOps, believe me. These are things that are just really critical. It's a lot of remote work. I think we might have touched on this. Do you feel, what certifications do you feel are necessary to be successful in the bioscience area? Do you guys have thoughts about that, about certs at these levels, community college level? Anything that they should?
At least for science, there's no specific certification that's necessary. If you don't have any experience, sometimes it's nice because it does get you some experience onto your resume that you know how to use basic lab equipment or something like that. But sometimes, you know, you just need to get yourself into a lab. And, you know, internships are a great place to start with that too.
What technological advances have been made to the industry that would be important to add to high school curriculums? What do you want to see the teachers that are on here, the professors, add to high school curriculums?
So I guess I can start with this one if nobody minds. What I've been noticing recently is a lot of coding has become a lot more mainstream, and a lot of the things we do, especially for easier languages like Python compared to like C++ or C. So a lot of times in the biotech or in tech industries, having some basic understanding of coding language is very helpful. Even if you don't know how to code, but you can go in and kind of understand the code structure, it really helps out for how, or helps the students as they're interning and while they're learning, understand the process and how whatever data is being collected is generated, things along those lines.
I'm not technically advanced, Alex, but how would that, could you explain how that would be used in the job? You know, I hope that's the right question.
Yeah, so a lot of STEM hands-on STEM internships rely a lot with have interns doing a lot of prototyping, and if we're doing if they're doing a lot of these prototyping aspects, it's fairly involved in both mechanical and also the entire system. So if you make something just 3D printing, but then getting it to move, how do you get it to move if you have systems controlling that arm, or that what, like a vehicle, if it's like a project where it's based off of like a race cars or things along those lines. it's just mostly these systems and just tinkering. Anything for high schoolers, if they enjoy tinkering, getting them also exposure to Python helps as well, or any basic coding language.
Sounds exciting to me. Okay, anybody want to contribute to that? I know it's a little bit beyond my area, but thank you for mentioning that. I never thought of coding, but I do know that the Department of Apprenticeship Services is funding community colleges and high schools now, especially in the Inland Empire, in coding classes and coding internships and apprenticeships. So now you've given me a little bit more of why it's important. Thank you for that. The question here is, when considering entry-level applicants, do you weigh work experience versus completed degrees? Do you have thoughts on that? Anybody?
Yeah, I can start. I think for me, work experience weighs heavily over a completed degree. In operations, I've seen very just superstar clinical trial managers, for example, come from various backgrounds, psychology, just things not even related to the biotech industry. It's really kind of getting in there and understanding kind of the problem solving skills and project management skills. So getting that experience, doing the day in, day out nitty gritty work experience is really critical.
Katie, do you see in ClinOps, do you see entry level applicants getting an internship or a pre-apprenticeship or apprenticeship in project management? Can they be an assistant to somebody like you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think there's really not a single path to becoming, a clinical trial manager, project manager, but it's really just kind of exposing yourself and being open to understanding kind of all the skill sets, because there's just so many pieces to operations, right? From positions such as being a project assistant or a clinical trial assistant. There's so many different opportunities. Staying in kind of that project management path, or even trying monitoring, for example, and really getting into the data and reviewing and doing verification, and then kind of coming back to the project management side. It's really kind of where you like to sit and what you like to learn and what you really enjoy doing, and then coming and bring it back to kind of a big whole picture, right? And then looking at the cross-functional areas and seeing what would I like to touch on and where would I like to work closely in. So definitely various opportunities that way.
Great, that's such a great answer. And the reason is I see sometimes people, young mothers, have to leave the workforce, but maybe they've had clinical research experience or ClinOps experience, but they're needed maybe in a newer biotech company because they don't have clinical quality departments. And you can take somebody that has all that, like you said, moved around in all the areas of ClinOps, and all of a sudden can put them in clinical quality because they can talk to clinical operations people, but they may not have had quality. So it's much easier to give them a quality and regulatory background, get them up to speed. But boy, that experience, that just hands-on being the assistant to an operations person like yourself and learning how the trials are done step by step by step. I think it's very exciting. I think people, there are many exciting things there. Anybody else want to say anything about work experience versus completed degrees? You're all open to internships, so I know you all feel very, very welcome and very open and welcoming to people coming in and on the job training and on the job learning, right? That's basically what we're talking about here. As
So
they get
Definitely. And I think, yeah, one of the things that I'd like to share, hopefully I don't lose reception this time, is that we recently got a college graduate as an intern. He didn't have experience, but he had all of the skills. And so he's learning how to be a communicator and to work with us. So straight out of school is okay too. He's had the business training, and now he's just learning additional skills.
Great. We we put a master's degree biostatistician into a biostats department for an apprenticeship. And believe it or not, out of all the apprentices that started out in clinical research and that sort of thing and so forth, the one with the master's degree had to spend the longest time in the apprenticeship to get the skills, the softer skills, to be able to work in a company. Because one has to remember that biostatisticians or people that are in applied math and epidemiology often are very quiet, technical, introverted people, and it takes them a longer time to conquer the skills of working on a team in a company in a very, shall we say, almost elitist department, which is biostats, right? Those people are all brainiacs. And it's very hard to, apprentices sometimes to learn, but they have the degree, they come in the door, and they do need to capture that experience and we didn't have to teach them anything in biostat, believe me. It was all having to do with the softer skills. So room for everybody, but the length of the apprenticeship or the length of the ramp up time might be longer for some people than for others. And we do on a case-by-case basis. I'm sure you do as well. You think of how long, I'm very happy to keep somebody in apprenticeship and keep supporting them with everything we can in terms of training and development for 3 or 4 years, if that's what it takes. And that's what it took for the master's level person. But they're better off for it, and they're now shooting to the stars. They'll be very successful in pharma. Okay.
Rosemary, I see that someone has raised their hand. She's Miss Merchant from Fullerton College. I just want to allow her a minute.
Go right ahead.
Yeah.
4:40.
Start her video and just add a note while we're on this topic.
Yes, exactly.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much. And I did apologize earlier to Netha. Today's been an exceptionally crazy day, so I apologize for popping in and out. So at Fullerton College, I'm the Director of Career Technical Education, and as part of that program, we oversee the internships on campus. So really exciting things happening at Fullerton College with our biotech area. We have our first ever collaboration with our Administration of Justice department here, which led to an internship with the Fullerton Police Department in their forensics lab. So that's something that we're really proud of. The other piece of that is we do offer our students career prep. So before they get into their internship program or during, we talk about a couple of things. One, how to interview, how to write your resume. And then we also talk about etiquette, both before, during, and after your internship, which I think is really important in terms of messaging, emails, all of that. And then lastly, we like to infuse through the internship and throughout their work, the NACE core competencies. Excuse me. So the National Association of Colleges and Employers have 8 core competencies that really kind of blanket across industries. It's inclusive of global awareness and communication and some others as well. But that's something that we like to infuse in our internships as well. So I just wanted to kind of give a perspective from the community college area.
Superior.
What was that?
I said superior. That's great.
Oh, I thought you said you couldn't hear me. I was like, the whole time.
No, that's great. The way you just summarized and put together the things, and we've been talking about all those things.
Great. That's awesome.
And we're closing in. Does anyone else have something particularly that they want to share? There's a question here. What is the greatest area of need or opportunity for growth in the bioscience industry? Does anybody have a special thing? The greatest area of need or the greatest chance for opportunity for growth? I can say that in from my standpoint, because we do a lot of work in the food industry, and the food industry is now considered in the science field. For years and years, it was just the food jobs were considered throwaway jobs, for example. Now, you have food engineers, food scientists, in addition to culinary, in addition to bakery, but you have engineering, you have all the equipment jobs because everything is becoming robotic in the food industry as well. So what we have a great need for is engineers and scientists to go into the food industry and take food science seriously. And I often say that the greatest growth is there because in the food industry, for example, you have E. coli, salmonella, and listeria, right? Can kill thousands and thousands of people. And we often don't think of that. We think of drugs. We need to have drugs all the time. But we have to also think of how many thousands and thousands of people. And I remember the FDA director telling me, when we have an E. coli outbreak, this is a little bit ago, I'm sure their science has come forward quicker. Everybody in the lab had to stop everything that they were doing and run out to the farms to find out where the E. coli came from. So we have tremendous opportunities for scientists, for lab scientists in the food industry. We need young people to understand about the great growth in the food industry on all areas. New foods, safer equipment, robotic equipment. We need all of that. So that's my area, one of my areas. And on the biotech side, we just need our apprenticeships, where we try to encourage them is to learn to be auditors from the very beginning. Because, after a while, I remember Novartis, for example, we placed a tremendous amount of CRAs. Novartis years ago, this is 20 some odd years ago, was training every single one of their CRAs to be an auditor. And you had to go once a year to Novartis's headquarters in East Hanover, New Jersey, if you were a CRA, do the auditing course. And these are people that are out in the field every day doing monitoring, but they also had to do the auditing course and pass the auditing course. So I encourage that in the biotech, because at some point a lot of these clinical research people, clinical operations people have to be auditors. So those are my areas. Now, I don't know about R&D, Cherie and Margaret and Alex. What is your areas of greatest need before we wrap this up?
So I'm actually going to make a plug for people who can straddle the divide between biology and coding, essentially, because so I'm a traditionally trained immunologist, but I don't necessarily understand bioinformatics. But the technology in biological sciences has gotten to the point where we can collect a lot of data on these huge data sets. So, for any one, let's say one sample, you can look at the expression of every single gene in a piece of tissue, and you can do that over 100 or even thousands of tissue samples. But I don't know how to analyze all that data, because you really need someone who understands coding, machine learning, things like that to do that, and in bioinformatics in general. But I would say the problem right now in the industry is really you have people like me who are traditional scientists, and then you have people who are sort of more traditional bioinformatics people who don't understand the science. And it's actually really hard to meet in the middle, because there's things that you need to understand from both sides in order to really take advantage of that data and understand how to analyze it so that we can understand either health or disease or things like that. And so there's Apple, Google, there are all these large kind of companies that are, you would traditionally consider them more kind of computer companies that are now coming into the space because they have the computing power. And now they're interested in getting into health. So I think that's really an area that's growing and that there's a huge need for.
You're absolutely correct. Spot on. So if you're talking to teachers and professors at the community college, what would you suggest for their curriculum? What would you suggest combining courses or a certificate program? What might you suggest to help things along at the community college level?
I would definitely suggest, if there's ways to do things like bioinformatics for biologists, or in the opposite direction, biology for bioinformatics people, something like that, to start to get these kind of cross-pollination of understanding of the different sides. Because I do think, and I see a little bit more now, like people who are interested in both because they really want to fix a problem, answer a question, something like that. You know, they really want to solve disease or make people healthier. And so if there's a way that we can, you know, start to incorporate some of that cross-pollination into what are more, you know, traditionally like these strict core curriculums, I think that would be really helpful in terms of introducing those ideas.
Exactly. Good. Exact. Wonderful suggestion. I like that a lot. I think that would be helpful all the way around, all the way around. Like you said, biology for for biostatisticians and bioinformatics people. Yes. In fact, the apprentices that I put at one of the big pharma companies were dealing with very traditionally trained biostatisticians. In our case, it was biostatisticians. It wasn't immunology R&D like but it was the biostats department. And the apprentices were the ones that ended up getting into the machine learning projects and working on it and capturing it and running with it. And it was because they could, I guess. And yes, and so that's the first time that I ran into it. Oh, what are you working on? Oh, machine learning. So, you are? Okay, thank you. This is great. But you didn't think you were doing that when you walked in the door for the apprenticeship, you know. So very good suggestion. Anybody else has a final suggestion where a need in industry? Margaret, do you have anything to say about needs for growth in your area?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of progress being made in a very quick manner, and much like climate change models, the models are becoming outdated for example. And so the models have become outdated, and we need to really think outside the box. And then we're pulling in brand new science that has been. So I think it's really important to cite one example. I saw a very young individual. I think he was 12 when he graduated college, and he was all over the TV, you know, and wow, he's 12 years old, you know, future of science and all of this. And he had these great ideas. And then fast forward, they had him back on when he had completed his college and what he was working on. Well, what he did is he was forced into those models. He didn't, in fact, create new ones. And so it's very important to think about that as you're going on this journey, that you're here in innovation to create new ones.
Yes. And I attend a lot of investment conferences, Alex. The biotech field has a lot of brand new biotech companies, and there's a big agency out of New York that brings on these companies like yours that are looking for funding. And I'm noticing that the CEO may be there, but there's always their scientists. Their scientists have to understand the business of getting something on the market. I haven't heard anybody talk about business classes or anything like that, but I'm seeing that these scientists they're there right side by side with the CEO or with with the business people and the operations people, and they have to be able to talk the language of business because they've got to get these investors. So I'd like to see in the future maybe a few courses on the business courses for scientists and engineers. I saw that for years and years in the organizations that I was working in, where the quality and regulatory science people couldn't speak the language of business at all. And then they'd wonder why their budget was on the down low. You know, they couldn't get their money for their part of the company. Everything went elsewhere. And it's because they couldn't talk the language of business. They had no concern about business. It was just like, this is the law. This is the way it has to be done. Do it this way. So there was no innovation in their heads and yet the whole world was changing all the time, and money is becoming more and more scarce. So that's what I'd like to see. Also, I would like to see is people understanding both sides of the equation, just like Cherie talked about understanding biology and informatics, bridging that. There has to also be an understanding of business at the same time, because even the FDA says we're going to stop trials in the middle. We're not going to let them go to the end. We want timelines. We want to see you come in here and show us how you're doing halfway through, because money is too precious and time is precious. You know, time is money. So that's one final thought that I had on things. Sorry, hopefully it wasn't too long an explanation. Anybody else have anything before we wrap up? We have 6 minutes.
Rosemary, I just want to emphasize that idea that you said in general, that you shouldn't feel required to fit a box. It is about innovation. And I think oftentimes when companies get stuck, even on smaller projects internally, is when you're trying to do the same thing as what's been done before, but it actually doesn't fit the situation that you need to, that you need to address. So I would say really, learning about what went before is really about just, seeing what tools you can take with you and then apply to the situation ahead versus like trying to do the same thing that was done before. And I think that's really important, like now more than ever in biotech in general.
Yes. Yes. It's always done this way. We never did it any other way. Well, excuse me.
I agree. Those words should never come out of your mouth.
Never, never. Because we're looking toward the newer professionals, toward the young adults, newer scientists, and so forth, to bring us new ideas. It's my millennials years and years ago that brought me the idea of cloud computing, and cloud, putting everything up on the cloud, and really I have a whole third company because my millennials told me about the cloud. I mean, and that's the way it happened. Didn't come from me. I was too busy in the business, right? So same thing in your areas, all of you. If our teachers could just, 3M had an idea years ago to just give 20% of their working time to their scientists and engineers to just spend money. They gave them money and said, spend it and be creative. And that's how Post-its came to the market, right? I'm sure you all know that story. It's a very classic story. So we have to think about that.
Thank you so much, Rosemary, and thank you so much for all of our wonderful industry representatives. I know I've taken away a lot from this session, and I can speak the same for all of our educators. They did ask one question early on when you guys were speaking about internships that I missed about bringing up. They wanted to know if you guys are working with Department of Apprenticeship Standards regarding any of the apprenticeships that you mentioned or internships that you had mentioned.
No.
Okay. No worries. And I just want to double check if you guys are okay. Please add in your contact information in the chat. And if they have any questions about your internships, they can follow up with you, because our goal for the advisory boards is connecting the educators with opportunities for their students that you guys might have. And as we wrap up, I just want to very quickly remind all of our participants on the call today that everything from today's session is recorded, and along with the transcript, they will be uploaded into our CTE OC portal, and my team and I will make sure that you have access to that. Everything else regarding our future advisory boards, upcoming programs and events, because we do have our Student Leadership Summit coming up, where we hope students are going to be gaining all the skills that we've brought up in this session during that event. So hopefully your students can attend that event, and hopefully they can gain some mentors and some new career opportunities through the industry representatives that will be with us during that event. And if you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out. We all know our website, vitalink.org. And thank you so much.
Thank you.